I never imagined that the happiest day of my life could turn into the start of a nightmare, but that's exactly what happened. I had spent months planning every detail of my daughter's wedding, pouring my heart and savings into what I believed would be the perfect gift to show her how much I loved her. And then, after all the excitement, all the tears, all the laughter, it happened. I handed her the keys to a brand new, stunning villa, fully furnished, in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. I wanted her to start her new life in comfort, to feel that she was loved and valued, and that no matter what happened in her marriage, she'd always have a safe, beautiful home. I thought I was giving her the world, but within days that world started to crumble around me. Because the moment she moved in with her husband, I began noticing the subtle changes. At first, they seemed innocent, maybe even funny, little quirks. Her husband, Raj, had this way of looking at me that always felt like he was sizing me up, measuring my reactions to everything I said or did. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. I mean, who wouldn't be protective of their daughter's happiness? But then came the day he moved in, and the villa I had gifted her became something I hardly recognized. Not a home for my daughter, but a fortress where I was no longer welcome. It started with small things, comments mostly, casual remarks about the villa, the way it was decorated, the money I spent. "You really didn't have to go this far, Auntie," he said one evening while I was helping unpack some of her boxes. I remember thinking it was a joke, maybe a hint of humility or sarcasm, but there was an edge to his tone I couldn't ignore. It grew from there. Doors that were once open were now shut when I visited. The warm greetings turned into forced smiles, awkward nods. Then came the first really cutting moment. My daughter, the girl I had raised, looked me in the eye and said, almost coldly, "Mom, I think Raj and I should have some privacy here. We'll handle everything ourselves. You don't need to be involved." My stomach dropped. That wasn't just a request. It felt like a dismissal, a subtle declaration that I was now an outsider in a space I had created out of love. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself she was just excited about her new life, that this was a normal shift in dynamics between a parent and a married child. But something about the way she said it, with that tight, lipped smile, told me otherwise. The tension didn't stop there. Raj, my daughter's new husband, began imposing little rules in the villa that made my blood boil. He decided how things should be arranged, what furniture should stay, what curtains should be replaced, and every time I visited, he found a way to make me feel like my opinions were irrelevant. I kept asking myself, is this normal for a new son-in-law? Am I overreacting? But deep down, I knew something was off. One evening, I went over to help my daughter organize her wedding gifts, and he pulled me aside, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret that was somehow meant to intimidate me. "This place is ours now," he said. "We appreciate the gift, but it's not your home anymore. Your role here is limited." I froze. The words stung, but what hit me harder was the tone, a mix of ownership and warning. I had given my daughter a home out of love, not expecting a battle over control, yet here I was, being subtly threatened by the man I thought I could trust. As the weeks went by, it escalated. Raj began questioning my daughter's choices, dictating who she could invite over, even commenting on the meals I cooked when I tried to bring her something from my kitchen. I watched my daughter, the one person I had thought would always have my back, start to change. She laughed less at my jokes, hesitated before hugging me, and once, she even rolled her eyes when I offered to help her with some paperwork for the villa. My heart ached. I wanted to confront her, to ask if she even realized what was happening, but I didn't want to push her away. I kept reminding myself that this was her marriage, and I had to respect her choices. But respecting her choices didn't mean watching her life, the home I had given her, being slowly hijacked by a man I could see clearly had ulterior motives. Something inside me told me that Raj wasn't just being controlling, he was planning something, and I didn't know how far he would go. The first real shock came about a month after the wedding. I got a call from a neighbor in the gated community where the villa was located. She said she had seen Raj at odd hours, coming and going with people I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe it was friends, colleagues, business partners. But then she mentioned that these visits always happened when my daughter was at work or out of town. A pit formed in my stomach. I didn't want to believe it, yet the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to investigate. I couldn't just stand by and watch my daughter's happiness be threatened, even if it meant confronting uncomfortable truths. I began paying closer attention during my visits, noticing the way Raj's phone would buzz constantly, the hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room, the mysterious parcels arriving at the villa with no explanation. I even started documenting things discreetly, taking notes, pictures, anything that might help me understand what was really going on. And then I found it, the first undeniable proof. Hidden in a corner of the garage, I saw a set of keys that didn't belong to the villa, along with envelopes marked with names I didn't recognize. My heart raced. I realized I had stumbled upon something much bigger than petty control issues or marital disagreements. This was a man who was plotting, someone who intended to take advantage of the trust I had placed in him, and possibly even in my daughter. The betrayal hit me harder than I could have imagined. The villa, which had been a symbol of love and joy, now felt like a trap, and I knew I had to act carefully. One wrong move, and not only would my daughter be hurt, but I might lose the very relationship I had built my life around. I tried to approach my daughter gently at first. I would hint at things, casually ask, "Have you noticed anything strange around the villa?" Or, "Are you sure everything is fine with the neighbors?" Each time, she brushed me off with a soft laugh, a dismissive wave, or a comment about how paranoid I was being. I hated that she didn't believe me, that she couldn't see the signs I was seeing. But then, I noticed her hesitation when Raj was around. Those micro-expressions, the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the way she would clutch her purse or glance nervously at the door. It gave me hope that maybe she wasn't completely blinded by him, that she could still see what I was starting to understand. That's when I realized that I had to prepare, to plan my next steps carefully. I couldn't confront Raj head-on, at least not yet. He was calculating, smart, and I had no idea how far he would go to maintain control. But I also couldn't just leave things be, not when my daughter's safety, her happiness, and the home I had gifted her were at stake. Around the middle of the story. I want you to really picture this. I'm standing in my daughter's living room. The villa quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner, staring at the very furniture I had picked out, the decor I had chosen with love, and realizing that I am now an intruder in my own daughter's life. That's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you confront him immediately? Warn your daughter and risk her anger, or quietly gather evidence, biding your time until you could act decisively? Because at this moment, everything was hanging by a thread, and one wrong decision could change everything forever. My heart was pounding every time I walked into that villa, not out of excitement or joy, but fear. Fear for my daughter, fear of the man she had married, and fear of what would happen if I didn't act smartly. I began retracing every moment since the wedding, trying to pinpoint when the first sign of trouble had appeared. Was it really on the day he moved in, or had it been there all along, hidden behind charm and politeness? The more I thought, the more I realized that I had ignored the subtle red flags because I wanted to believe in the goodness of people, especially in someone who was now officially family. But the truth was staring me in the face, and I had to acknowledge it, no matter how painful. I had to face the reality that my daughter's husband was not the man I had hoped for her, and the villa, my gift of love, was now at the center of a dangerous game I hadn't anticipated. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I started noticing changes in the villa that seemed deliberate. Things moved around, doors locked, subtle alterations in the layout. It was as if Raj wanted to assert control over every corner, every object, every aspect of the space. Even the way my daughter walked through the rooms had changed. She moved with a certain caution, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. I tried to talk to her, tried to reach her emotionally, but she was caught between loyalty to me and the influence of her husband. One evening, I decided to stay late, ostensibly to help with some decoration adjustments. I waited until she went to bed and then sneaked around, carefully observing the villa, taking mental notes of anything unusual. That's when I saw him, Raj, standing in the study, holding what looked like documents, his expression tense, almost predatory. I realized he was planning something big, something that could have long-term consequences for my daughter and her inheritance. The villa wasn't just a home anymore. It had become a battleground, a stage for manipulation, and I had to prepare myself for what was coming next. I knew that confronting him blindly could ruin everything, but doing nothing was even worse. That's when I started formulating a plan, carefully thinking through each step, each move, like a chess game where the stakes were my daughter's life and happiness. So there I was, standing in the shadows of my daughter's study, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Raj held the documents tightly, glancing around as if he expected someone to appear at any moment. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, a mix of fear, betrayal, and protective instinct for my daughter. I realized right then that waiting any longer could be dangerous. This man, the one I had welcomed into my family, had crossed a line, and I had to do something before it was too late. I decided to confront him, but I knew it had to be on my terms, not impulsively in the heat of anger. I spent that night crafting a careful plan, thinking through every word, every move, and every possible reaction from him. By morning, I felt ready, determined to protect my daughter and reclaim the villa that was supposed to be a place of love and safety. I reminded myself that I wasn't just confronting a husband. I was confronting someone who had shown manipulative tendencies, someone who had no respect for the woman I raised or the home I had given her. The villa had become a battlefield, and I was prepared to fight, not with violence, but with strategy and truth. The next day, I invited my daughter to lunch at her favorite cafe, making it sound casual and innocent. I needed her alert, aware, and emotionally ready for the conversation I was about to guide her through. As we sat across from each other, sipping our drinks, I tried to read her expressions. There was hesitation, yes, but also a glimmer of trust, a small window that Raj hadn't completely closed. I began gently, asking how things had been at the villa, whether she was happy, whether she felt comfortable with all the decisions Raj was making. At first, she shrugged, giving vague responses, clearly trying to avoid conflict. But as I pressed gently, asking about the late-night visitors, the parcels, and the keys I had found, I saw her eyes widen. Her hands trembled slightly, and for the first time in weeks, I saw the daughter I knew, the girl who trusted me, who relied on me. I could feel my own heart swell with both relief and dread. She was beginning to realize what I had been seeing all along, and now we were both in this together. That was the moment I knew we could finally turn the tide. I leaned closer, voice low and intense, and said, "You have to trust me. Raj is not who he appears to be, and if we don't act now, he could take everything from you, including your happiness and the home I gave you." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded, finally admitting the truth she had been hiding from herself. "I thought I was imagining things," she whispered, "but now I see it too." That moment solidified my resolve. I realized that my daughter needed me, not just as her mother, but as someone who could navigate this storm with her, someone who could stand up to a man who had no respect for boundaries or love. We decided to gather more evidence before confronting him directly. We couldn't risk acting without proof, because I knew that Raj could manipulate the situation, twist the narrative, and possibly turn my daughter against me completely. Over the next several days, we observed, recorded, and documented everything. Every late-night meeting, every suspicious call, every unexplained parcel was noted. I even enlisted the help of a trusted security consultant to discreetly monitor activity around the villa. I had to admit, I was both proud and horrified at the same time. Proud that I was finally taking action, horrified at the realization of just how deep Raj's manipulations ran. The villa, once a symbol of joy, had become a web of deceit, and we were carefully untangling it strand by strand. Each revelation fueled my determination. I discovered that Raj had been funneling money from my daughter's accounts, secretly transferring funds, planning to gain control over the villa legally within a few months. The betrayal was staggering, and I felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could someone we trusted, someone I had welcomed into my family, stoop to such depths? I realized that this confrontation was inevitable, that the final showdown could not be delayed any longer. I had to protect my daughter, and I had to reclaim what was hers, both legally and emotionally. The day of confrontation arrived, and I prepared myself mentally and emotionally. I wanted to remain calm, composed, and authoritative, showing Raj that I would not be intimidated. My daughter and I walked into the villa together, carefully, deliberately, and I could see him noticing us immediately, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. He tried to mask it with a smile, but I wasn't fooled. I had practiced my words, anticipated his defenses, and prepared for every possible manipulation. "Raj," I began, voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." He looked at me smugly at first, as if he had already won, as if he could dismiss me with a few words. But then I presented the evidence, the records, the photos, the documents, the notes. I watched as his confidence wavered, then crumble. My daughter, standing beside me, added her observations, her voice shaky but determined. Together, we laid everything out. The money transfers, the secret meetings, the parcels, the keys, every detail meticulously documented. Raj's smug expression faded, replaced by a mixture of anger and fear. He tried to interrupt, to charm, to manipulate, but I had anticipated every tactic. I remained calm, unwavering, letting the weight of truth speak for itself. For the first time, I saw him genuinely rattled. That man, who had tried to control our lives, was now confronted with undeniable facts. The power dynamic had shifted, and I could feel it. Raj tried one last ploy, a desperate attempt to intimidate us, suggesting threats, legal implications, even bringing up the idea of divorce to scare my daughter. But we were ready. I had already consulted a lawyer, and my daughter was informed and supported. We were no longer passive victims. We were a united front, determined to protect what was rightfully hers. I could see the frustration building in him, the realization that his manipulation had failed. He was trying to regain control, but the villa, the home I had gifted my daughter, was no longer his to dominate. The confrontation lasted hours, with tense exchanges, raised voices, and sharp arguments, but in the end, the truth prevailed. Raj finally had no choice but to back down, to acknowledge his actions, and to agree to the terms we had set. My daughter, though shaken, looked at me with gratitude and relief, and I felt an overwhelming sense of vindication. We had reclaimed the villa, reclaimed our peace, and most importantly, reclaimed the trust that had been threatened. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The villa, once a symbol of conflict, began to feel like home again. My daughter and I spent time together, re-establishing the bond that Raj's presence had strained. We laughed, we cried, and we celebrated the small victories, each one a reminder of how far we had come. Raj, on the other hand, maintained a tense distance, no longer able to manipulate or control the space. My daughter grew stronger, more confident, aware now of the boundaries she needed to set and enforce. The villa, my gift, had become more than just a home. It was a testament to resilience, love, and the power of standing up against betrayal. I realized that the experience, though painful, had strengthened both of us. It had shown my daughter the importance of vigilance, self-respect, and the value of trusting her instincts. And for me, it had reinforced a lesson I had known all along, that a parent's love is not passive. It is active, protective, and relentless, especially when the well-being of your child is at stake. As I look back on everything now, I can't help but feel a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering caution. I gave my daughter the villa because I loved her, because I wanted her to have a foundation of comfort and security. What I didn't anticipate was the battle that would come with it. But in the end, love and truth won. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. No matter how insidious the deception, honesty, courage, and a united front can overcome even the most calculated betrayal. To anyone watching this story, I want you to take this to heart. Never underestimate the strength that comes from protecting the ones you love, and never let fear keep you from standing up for what's right. Always pay attention to the subtle signs, trust your instincts, and act decisively when necessary. Because sometimes, the people who seem closest to us may not have our best intentions, and it's our responsibility to ensure the ones we love are safe, secure, and valued. If you were on my side in this story, give this video a like. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have acted the same way, or differently? I want to hear your perspective on this whole mess, because honestly, it was one of the hardest experiences of my life. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, where real people face unbelievable situations and have to make impossible choices. I'll see you all in the next story. Until then, remember to trust your instincts, protect your loved ones, and never let anyone make you feel powerless in your own life. Because in the end, the truth has a way of coming out, and love, true love, always finds a way to prevail.